Warzone Season 1 is here, and I got you guys with a fresh new graphic settings video for all consoles, including OGen, so PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. I will say that the new Area 99 map looks quite different since we are now on the Black Ops 6 engine and lighting, so everything in today's video has been adjusted to make the colors pop and the map overall more brighter and visible. So with that being said, if you guys do enjoy today's video and learn something new, make sure you guys drop a like and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you guys have any questions, you can always leave a comment. I will try to touch back with as many of you guys as I can. You should use code DUPER at hexgaming.com. They have some pretty dope controllers. Alrighty guys, here we are in the first setting for today's video. We're looking at gamma and brightness. Guys, I cannot stress this enough. This is probably one of the most important settings in the entire video. I see a lot of you guys crank your brightness all the way to the max and you're trying to, see enemies in dark corners, but this is not going to help that. This is just going to make all dark corners and the enemies lighter, but you're still not going to be able to actually see them. So you want to make sure this is set to a number where it's actually barely visible for you. Everyone has a different TV, everyone has different monitors, so this might vary, but for me, I set mine around 50, maybe like 48. This is the range that's best for me. You guys play around with it. Make sure that 2 is barely visible. I can't stress this enough. This is definitely going to help your guys' game look a lot better. As for my world and weapon motion blur, I have those both set to off, which is kind of personal preference, but I kind of get dizzy and kind of sick when I see it, so mine are off. And also, the inverted flashbang option is pretty cool if you guys don't want to get flashbanged. If you're playing in a dark room, it really helps with that, opposite. So instead of being flashbanged, your screen is just going to go black. Now, the upscaling and sharpening, if you guys play on console, it depends on what you play on. I would say for OGen, you probably don't want to use fidelity because fidelity is the most taxing on your console. It's going to give you some frame drops. Now, if you do use fidelity on OGen, so this goes for PS4 and Xbox One, you guys probably want to go ahead and use something like 30 with the strength. You don't want to go too much over that, maybe 40. That's going to preserve some more frames, but still, I would just kind of recommend you stray away from fidelity if you care about frames. If you don't care about your performance, then you can use fidelity as much as you want and max it if you want to. But if you guys actually care about your frame rate, you might want to, turn that a bit down. Now, for new gen consoles, so Xbox Series X and PS5, you guys can use fidelity. That's the best option. It gives it the most crispiest look, and the sharpness is just perfect. You guys can turn it up to as much as you want. I have mine set to 50. In my opinion, 50 is perfectly fine. I feel like anything that's like over 60 or 70 is kind of overkill. You don't really need that much sharpness. And anyways, we're going to be going into other sharpness. But yeah, as I was saying, we're going to go over some other sharpness settings for your monitors a little bit later. But first, we're going to cover over all the in-game settings. Now, if you guys haven't already, you guys can change your field of view to 120. This will give you the most competitive edge when it comes to, in general, just fighting other enemies. You can see more of what's around you, and your field of view is just bigger. That's just naturally how it works. You guys can see on the right, it shows exactly the difference between 60 to 120 and how much more zoomed out you can see. Now, if you're playing old gen, this could drop frames because your screen is literally rendering in more things at one time. However, if you really want to have that competitive edge, I would recommend still running 120 FOV even on a old gen console. I do it personally on my PS4 and my PS5. Alright guys, in the interface settings, you guys go over to readability and scroll down to color customization. This is where you can actually start playing with colors in the game, which is honestly a very underrated setting. Right here, you can choose all of your different color HUD palettes. You have you, your team, party, enemy, all these different colors. Now for enemy, I recommend you guys choose a nice bright red. It's going to help you guys see them better in multiplayer. And for you, you can choose whatever color you want. You can kind of play with all these. If you guys are colorblind, you guys can't see certain colors, or certain colors are the same to you, you can change them around so they're actually different. For me, I just chose mine as black. And on the color filter settings, this is where you can actually change the interface and the world. So everything around you, vehicles, houses, buildings, everything's going to be affected by these. Now, I recommend you guys choose filter 2. This one gives it the most color in my opinion. So if you choose filter 2 and then apply this to world color intensity, that's going to change the way the game looks literally. The higher this is, the more intense the colors are going to be. Kind of like a saturation setting, but not quite. It's not saturation, but it will, increase the intensity, if that makes any sense. And I recommend you guys set this to whatever you want. I don't really think you're going to need it for the actual interface because you have these to play around with. So instead, you can just use this for world only and set your world color intensity to whatever you guys want. You can go into a game and just play around with it until you find the perfect spot. So now that we have gone over everything you can do in game for your settings, we're going to go over some other tips for you guys, which has to do with your TV and your monitor settings, how you guys can make those look way better as well. So for this part, I'm going to give you guys a quick guide on how you guys can go in your monitor or TV to change these settings to make it look much better. Now this right here is probably the most effective thing you can do from today's video if you guys are trying to get that saturation, that color, And I'm gonna tell you right now that you guys might not all have a TV that has these settings, so keep that in mind. If you guys do play on an older TV that doesn't really have settings like this, then you're kind of out of luck. I'm sorry about that, but most of you guys are using like newer smart TVs or just newer TVs in general should have this setting, as well as monitors. If you have any LG monitors, you will also have these settings. So first things first is your color. There's different words for this. You have saturation, color vibrance, color intensity. If you guys play around with your color, that's how you actually increase saturation and make things more colorful. So if you guys watch the gameplay right now, I do have my color up, I think about 75%. So normally it's at 50%, but I increased it by 25%, leaving it at 75. So that's why my game looks more colorful, and that's how you control your color on your monitor and TV. Now, another very important tool is sharpness, and this is even more important if you're on old gen because you can't use fidelity that much since it's going to really tax your performance. So if you guys play on old gen, if you guys are using the lower fidelity settings like I told you before, you guys should turn your sharpness up to about 75 to 80% if you're starting off from 50%. And if you guys are just playing on a PC or a new gen console, you guys can just leave your sharpness at what it is, or you can turn it up if you want to. I personally don't like a really grainy looking game, and increasing your sharpness up really high does make your game look really grainy, so I just leave mine at normal. And for contrast, you guys definitely want to play around with your contrast because that's going to make your colors look more darker and richer, and it's also going to help the game not look washed if you guys do have your brightness up a bit too high. But for that, I still recommend you guys turn your brightness down if you guys do feel like your game looks washed. But yeah, contrast is very, very important if you actually want to get those deeper and richer colors. But those right there are the 3 best settings you guys can use in your TV or monitor to enhance the color and the overall graphics of the game. Like I said, all of you guys might not have these settings, but most of you guys should. There are other settings you guys can play around with if you want to. Do not mess around with RGB. I know a lot of you guys in the last video commented about that. I would not advise. I simply don't really know much about RGB. I don't really play around with it, so I'm in no position to give advice on that. I do not want your guys' games looking super, super crazy, so I'm only going to speak on the things that I know. But maybe in the future, I will test out RGB settings to see if I can come up with something that would work for Warzone. But with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace, love, and understanding always.